Hello, I'm Jonathan, and welcome back to the channel. This is my 1989 Dodge Dakota. I picked this up about a month ago, and I had plans on getting it running, fixing it up, and using it. I only gave a few $100s for the truck, which still may have been a few $100s too much. This is the only body damage on the truck, which doesn't really look too bad. Maybe we shouldn't look at this right now. It comes with a really nice interior. Well, it's kind of nice. At least it has a seatbelt or two. Well, a few are missing. But still, it's a 5-speed. Isn't that exciting? Came with a pretty nifty toolbox, so at least I got that as a deal. So why would I buy a truck like this? Well, this looks almost identical to my first truck that I drove when I was a kid. And just like the one that I had as a kid, when I got it, it needed work. So let's get working on it. What you're looking at is a 2.5 4-cylinder engine. It is fuel injected, no turbo, and barely makes any power at all. I've owned a couple of these trucks. My first one was carbureted. My second one was fuel injected. It was also an 89. And the truck runs. Well, kinda. It ran for about 3 miles. Then I had to pull off into a parking lot. Then I had to tow it home. Even with the truck in the condition it's in, let me tell you what some things that I noticed that kind of encouraged me about buying the truck. The first one would be the reason why the seller was selling it. He bought the truck off of a friend who had done some work to the truck, but he could not keep it running. He told me that it would flood out. It would start and run, but then flood out and wouldn't restart. But this is fuel injected. Fuel injected will rarely flood. So my thought is it wasn't flooding, it was starving for fuel. So the kid replaced almost every sensor on this truck, bought new plugs, new wires, new solenoids, anything electrical that he thought could be fixed with it, he tried to fix. He thought it was some kind of computer issue, but I really don't think that was the issue. Let me show you something else that brought me some excitement about the truck. A couple things. First off, this cylinder head. That head has been tanked in the recent past. The heads that have been on these trucks for a long time do not look like this. Now, this head's dirty. It's got some dirt on it. But all in all, that's a very clean head. So whoever this friend is, looks like he had the head redone on this truck, which meant that it was tanked. It was probably flattened on the surface, and the valves were probably done. So that gives me a lot of encouragement. The second thing is this thing has aftermarket oil pan gasket set on it, which is another sign that someone has been in this engine, and it probably has new bearings, which means most likely the crank has been turned. So someone put a lot of work into this. And last but not least, that flywheel doesn't look old. The kid told me that the new clutch had been put on it, and it looks like the flywheel is either newer, or has been turned, which is another sign that this engine's been gone through. And I will admit that when I did drive this for the 2 or 3 miles I did, it ran amazing. It ran smooth. It drove great. And I thought, boy, this thing's going to take me all the way home. And sure enough, after 3 or 4 miles, it just kind of puttered out on me. But when it did run, it ran very well. Okay, so my plan for this thing is to take off basically everything and from the ground up, revamp this little truck, which means there's going to be a little bit of new parts on it. I'm going to get it to run well. I'm going to check all the fluids. I'm going to pull the engine. I'm going to look at the transmission. And all that starts today. So tonight, my goal is just to remove the bed and leave the bed out here because I want to start looking at the frame and then pulling it into the shop. All right, now to disconnect the tank. Wait. Looks like it's already disconnected. Ooh, flathead. That's interesting. Go to the break for a second, sweetie. Now to move the truck into the shop. Okay, so it's been a couple days now since we pulled the truck into the shop here, and we're going to give you a rundown a little bit about what I'm thinking. My plan was to try to drive the truck a little bit before I took it apart. However, there's a few things that kind of concern me about the engine and about the truck in general that have me a little concerned, and the reason why I'm going to go ahead and start processing it or tearing it apart. And the big reasons are the engine, the timing belt's pretty chewed up. I really don't want to take the risk of driving it, splitting that belt, causing engine damage. Number two, it's a pretty massive oil leak in the oil pan gasket. You can see where the pan gasket's being pushed out. Guaranteed tightened it too tight and now it leaks. And number three, the rear end is not the rear end that originally came in the truck. I found this out after purchasing the truck and talked to the fella, and that it doesn't have any rear brakes and they're not even hooked up. So the only brakes this truck has is in the front. So anyway, that's just the beginning. So one of the things I want to do is I want to pull the engine and the transmission out of there so I can start tearing them apart and disassembling them so I can do an evaluation of the health of the engine. But I'm not quite there yet for a couple of reasons. The big one is my engine stand's being used by another engine right now, and I need to go ahead and put that engine back together before I pull this one out and put it up on there. And the other reason is it'll be a whole lot easier to pull this engine and do the work I want to do to it when the whole front end of the truck is missing, the fenders and the hood and the grill and the bumper and all that. Once all that's gone, that engine will pull out of there real quick. So tonight, I'm just going to spend a little bit of time. I'm going to start disassembling the truck, and we're going to see how far we get tonight. I don't have a lot of time, but I do want to spend a little bit of time working on the truck, getting it disassembled. All right, let's start off with the very front end of the truck here. I'm going to lift the hood, and we're going to remove all the grill and headlight bezels and all that in the front from the core support. And then I'll probably remove the hood, and then I'll remove the covering for the windshield wiper mechanism, and we'll go from there. But then from there, I'm going to give you a tip about what you should do before you do a lot of this work to make sure everything goes back together again. One of the things to do when you're doing this is I've used this worked for me my last project, but I just get Ziploc Ziploc baggies, and I write on them what's inside, and that way I put the bolts that I take out of the hood and stuff, and I put them, or not just the hood but everything, and I put them in there, and that way when I go to put it back together, I know exactly where it all is. I know this seems tedious, and I know if I was younger I'd be like, I'll figure it out, but this will save you hours of time. This might look like a mess now, but wait until you have this thing completely stripped down and you're trying to put it back together and can't remember how it went. So one thing that you want to do is you want to try to take as many pictures of the inside of the hood, under the cab, how the brake lines and electrical lines are ran, and try to have all that stuff documented in some way, shape, or form. So when you're putting it back together, you only have to spend 5 or 10 minutes looking up how it went instead of spending hours figuring out how it went and hoping you get it right. Start out by removing your battery tray. I've already removed the bolts. You know, what's funny is this really doesn't look bad. Some of these battery trays, because the battery acid will eat away through them and rust them out, but that tray looks pretty good. I'm actually very impressed with actually the condition of that tray. Now let's take off the rest of the stuff that's on this fender. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the grill and then the other bezel, and then I'll get to removing the bumper. All right, let's take this outside. Well, I'm out of time for the evening. When you do a project like this, you take it like an elephant. You take a little bit of bite at a time. Tonight, all I want to do is start making progress of removing some things off the truck, and I made that goal. I was able to remove the bumper, the front grille, the headlight bezels, the hood, the windshield wiper mechanism cover, and I was able to get some pictures in of how it's supposed to be laid out. And we should be good. So next time, when you come back, my goal is to get these fenders off, get the front core support off, and basically there's not going to be anything in here but an engine and a cab. And then I'm probably going to move back into the cab and remove the doors, remove the interior of the truck, because I want to inspect the condition of the cab, because I have another cab if I need to use it, and start going that route. So thanks for joining me, everybody. I hope you have a great evening, and I'll see you next time.